Interview.
I'm Steve Bauman. I'm the writer of Supreme Commander 2 and worked on the single-player campaign design. Well, with Supreme Commander 2, at the very beginning of the project, we decided that we wanted to put more emphasis on characters and story. And then when Square Enix became our partner, they supported us 100%. They encouraged us. They asked for more detail, more depth, more characterization. They had us fill in more backstory, none of which necessarily makes it into the game. However, for every character, every motivation that they have has a full history about why they would make those particular decisions, even if they're not fully articulated within the game. Because we don't have extremely long cutscenes. We don't have, full-blown FMVs. This is not Final Fantasy. This is a real-time strategy game, but we do have story details that are given in mission briefings. We have multiple FMVs during our campaign that set up each campaign, that close the campaigns. So getting back to the original between Supreme Commander and Forged Alliance and the previous versions of the game, we have one linear campaign that goes through each of the three factions. Each campaign has 6 operations. They tell a single self-contained story, but the 3 interlink in multiple ways. The characters interlink, the storyline mysteries are left at certain points and picked up elsewhere, and everything holds together as one intertwined story despite being 3 separate campaigns. Well, when you're talking about any faction or any sort of, or if you're just talking about the United States or any country or anything like that, we may have a unified ideology, but within that unified ideology, we have individual motivations and some things that give context to that greater ideology. So while the UEF is kind of a nation first, you have individuals within the faction who buy into it 100%. You have some who buy into it 50%. You have some that maybe under certain contexts in some certain situations may defy their faction because they don't believe as strongly or there's some other motivation behind them. So that's why individual characterizations are incredibly important, because if you just have faceless factions, it's too simplistic, because individuals are complex. Faction ideologies, high level, are very simple and one-dimensional. So with Supreme Commander 2, we have the 3 main characters for each of the factions, and they represent a portion of the ideology for each of the factions, but they have their personal motivations. So in the UEF campaign, we have a member of the UEF. He is a believer in the UEF, and he is faced to make decisions that over the course of the campaign impact his family. He's married, he has a child. These are important to him. They're more important, perhaps, than ideology. And in any battle scenario, you can come across this, even in the context of like a global battle where you're fighting on an entire planet, an individual is still controlling that battle. So therefore, that individual's motivations can affect their battlefield performance. In the Illuminate campaign, you have a brother and sister who are working with a splinter group, who are trying to restore the old Illuminate, Aeon Illuminate faction, which was in Supreme Commander and Forged Alliance. We had Princess Rianne Burke, who led this Aeon Illuminate, and they are a member of a group that's trying to restore that portion of the Illuminate back into power, because the current Illuminate government has joined this coalition of all 3 factions, and it's sort of adopted a more UEF-like structure. The coalition, the UEF being kind of this dominant alpha faction, sort of dominates the political landscape. So they've adopted their currency systems. They've adopted they've kind of put religion into which was important to the Aeon Illuminate. They had a sort of spiritual side that's kind of been put to the wayside. These people are trying to restore that, so that's why they are opposed to the current Illuminate government. That is their motivation throughout the campaign. It's a brother and sister who are fighting for political ideology. And in the final campaign, you have Dr. Brackman and his son, who he is still experimenting on his Cybran nation to improve it, to bring improvements to mankind. And this campaign kind of covers the limitations of technology and some of the implications of these kind of large sweeping technological changes on factions, on war, on individuals. So Supreme Commander 2 has 2 tutorial operations that you can play outside of the campaign. Then we have a 6-operation UEF campaign. We have a 6-operation Illuminate campaign and a 6-operation Cybran campaign. Within each of these operations, you'll find a much more varied gameplay types. You'll have the huge epic battles that Supreme Commander is known for, with map reveals, But we also have some smaller operations that can be played faster. We have some operations that have extremely unique objectives for the series that you wouldn't expect. We have some, we don't want to spoil anything, obviously. We have a lot of, I think you'll find that the experience is a little bit more interesting and a little less focused on just the same sort of build a base, build a bunch of armies, so sort of the skirmish mechanic, because we still have a skirmish mode, so you can still play those big battles anytime you want, but in the single player campaign we vary it. It's considerably more varied. Spring Painter 2 is scheduled for release on the PC and Xbox 360 in March.